Title: CEO invited the single dad to dinner, but when he came, he realized the reason. The invitation arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Daniel Carter was sitting at the small kitchen table in his modest apartment, staring at a pile of unpaid bills while his 8-year-old daughter Lily colored quietly beside him. Life had not been easy since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Daniel worked 2 jobs, barely sleeping, just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Still, he never complained. Every night he told Lily the same thing. Hard times don't last forever, sweetheart. Kind people always find a way. That day, among the bills and advertisements, one envelope stood out. It was thick, elegant, and sealed with a gold emblem. Daniel frowned as he opened it. Inside was a formal invitation. Mr. Daniel Carter, you are cordially invited to dinner tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. at the residence of Mr. Alexander Grant, CEO of Grant Industries. Daniel blinked in confusion. Alexander Grant was one of the richest and most powerful CEOs in the city. Daniel had seen his face on magazine covers and business news channels. Men like him didn't invite people like Daniel to dinner. There had to be some mistake. Daddy, what is it? Lily asked, looking up from her drawing. Daniel forced a small smile. I honestly don't know. That night, Daniel barely slept. Questions kept running through his mind. Why would a billionaire CEO invite a struggling single father to dinner? The next evening, Daniel borrowed a clean shirt from a neighbor and asked Mrs. Rodriguez, the elderly woman down the hall, to watch Lily. Don't worry, mijo, she said warmly. Your little angel will be safe with me. Still confused and slightly nervous, Daniel made his way to the address written on the invitation. When he arrived, his breath caught. The mansion stood on a hill overlooking the city. Tall gates opened slowly as a security guard checked his name. The driveway curved through perfectly trimmed gardens before stopping at a grand entrance where warm lights glowed through massive windows. Daniel suddenly felt very small. A butler opened the door before he could even knock. Mr. Carter, we've been expecting you. Inside, everything looked like something from a movie. Marble floors, high ceilings, paintings that probably cost more than Daniel earned in years. Then a calm voice spoke behind him. Mr. Carter. Daniel turned. Standing there was Alexander Grant himself. He was tall, sharply dressed, but his expression was surprisingly warm. Thank you for coming, the CEO said, extending his hand. Daniel shook it, still confused. I'm honored, sir. But I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding. Grant smiled slightly. No misunderstanding. Please, join me for dinner. We'll talk. They sat at a long dining table, though only 2 seats were set. The meal was elegant, but Daniel barely touched his food. Finally, he couldn't hold the question any longer. Sir, may I ask why I'm here? Grant leaned back in his chair and studied Daniel for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. 3 months ago, my son got into a car accident. Daniel looked up, surprised. It happened late at night. Rainy roads. The car flipped near an empty highway. Grant's voice grew quieter. The doctors later told me that if someone hadn't called for help immediately, he wouldn't have survived. Daniel frowned slightly. I'm very sorry that happened. Grant nodded slowly. The strange part is, the person who saved him left before anyone could thank him. He reached into his jacket and placed a small photograph on the table. Daniel's heart skipped. The photo showed a blurry image captured by a nearby security camera. A man kneeling beside a wrecked car, holding a phone to his ear, while trying to help the injured driver. The man was Daniel. Daniel stared at it, stunned. That was just an accident I passed on my way home, Daniel said quietly. Anyone would have helped. Grant shook his head. No, many people drove past that night. Only one stopped. Daniel remembered it clearly now. The twisted car, the injured young man barely conscious, the ambulance sirens in the distance. He never even knew who the victim was. I stayed until the ambulance came, Daniel said softly. But I had to get back home to my daughter. Grant nodded. My son later told the police that the man who saved him kept reassuring him the whole time, saying things like, stay awake. Your family needs you. Daniel swallowed. That's what I would have wanted someone to tell me. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Grant said something that completely changed everything. My investigators searched for weeks to find you. Daniel looked shocked. Why? Grant's eyes softened. Because my son is alive today because of you. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I didn't do anything special. Grant smiled gently. That's exactly why I wanted to meet you. He stood up and walked toward the large window overlooking the city lights. You see, Mr. Carter, I built a company worth billions. But sometimes I forget what truly matters. Daniel listened quietly. My son told me something after he woke up, Grant continued. He said the man who saved him looked exhausted. Like life had been hard on him. But his voice was calm, kind. Grant turned back toward Daniel. And I realized something important. Daniel waited. Success means nothing if we ignore people who deserve a chance. Grant walked back to the table and placed a folder in front of Daniel. Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside was a job offer. Director of Community Outreach for Grant Industries. The salary alone was more money than Daniel had ever imagined earning. His hands began to tremble. I'm not qualified for something like this, Daniel said honestly. Grant smiled. You're exactly qualified. Daniel looked confused. Grant explained. You understand struggle. You understand kindness. My company needs leaders who remember what it means to care about people. Daniel sat silently, overwhelmed. Why me? He asked quietly. Grant's answer was simple. Because when no one was watching, you chose to stop and help a stranger. Daniel thought about Lily, their small apartment, the nights he worried about the future. Slowly, tears filled his eyes. I just wanted my daughter to grow up knowing her father tried to do the right thing. Grant nodded. And now she'll know that kindness can change lives. Later that night, Daniel returned home. Lily ran into his arms the moment he walked through the door. Daddy, how was the dinner? Daniel knelt down and hugged her tightly. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Finally, he smiled. It was life-changing. Did you eat fancy food? She asked excitedly. Daniel laughed softly. Yes, but the best thing I got tonight wasn't food. What was it? Daniel looked into his daughter's bright eyes. Proof that being kind, even when life is hard, always matters. Months later, Daniel started his new job helping families in need through Grant Industries community programs. Every day, he remembered the moment he stopped on that dark highway. The moment that seemed small at the time, but turned out to change everything. And the message Daniel shared with every person he helped was simple. You never know how powerful a single act of kindness can be. Sometimes the smallest good deed can open the biggest door.